Hi, I'm Frank and welcome to my wood turning channel. This week I'm going to turn a maple leaf just out of a piece of 2-inch stock. And I'm going to start off with a little bit of a template, just a picture I downloaded from the internet, and I cut this out on some hardboard. And then I just put that on the piece of wood and trace out the pattern. And then I'm going to go to the bandsaw and cut that out. I'm mainly removing some of the large pieces first, but with all these small narrow cuts, it's really important to make a cut right in the center of the groove, just as a relief cut. I'm going to use a screw chuck to mount this, so I'm just drilling a 3/8 inch hole for the screw chuck. I'm going to do this project on a mini lathe. Now, the piece isn't really that big, but what I found here on this was the tool rest was all nicked up and marked up. So I'm just taking a file to take out all of those little nicks, and then I'll go over it with a piece of sandpaper as well. It'll just make the cuts a lot smoother. It's important when you're putting the screw into these chucks that the screw is aligned properly, and then you want to pull it out just a little bit before you tighten it up, so that when the wood is screwed onto it, it won't pull it anymore. I often use a little spacer plate on the screw, just so that on small projects you don't have to use the full depth of the screw, and it also gives a little bit nicer flat surface for the piece to rest up against. I'm just showing sharpening of my tool. I always take a marker and mark the surface to be sharpened. That way I know I've actually taken and sharpened it fully. And here I'm just using a little jig to set the depth of the gouge in my vari-grind jig. I'm not in my normal shop with my CBN wheels. Here I'm using an aluminum oxide wheel. It's a bit rough, it's shaking quite a bit, but I'm doing my best just to get a nice smooth sharpening flow so I can get a good edge on the tool. I'm going to start out just using this 1/2" bowl gouge, and I'll get the speed up as high as I can without the machine vibrating. And I'm just using pull cuts here just to get my shape. In fact, I'll use pull cuts to do the majority of the back, and then I'll finish up with a push cut. These pull cuts that I've been doing, they are a bevel rubbing cut because I have the handle down really low and I am rubbing the bevel on the left hand side of the tool, so it's not a scraper cut. And just going slow and smooth, you can actually cut right out to the tips without getting any tear out. Now I'm just showing that pull cut from a different angle, so you can see here clearly that the bevel is gliding along the workpiece. Now I'm just carefully checking to see which is the narrowest section here, and I'll mark that so I can keep my eye on that and make sure I don't get too thin. I can get a much better finish on this with a nice slow controlled push cut. And for something like this, I find it easier just to get on the other side of the lathe and just do a smooth push cut right to the end. And yeah, this gives a much better surface finish on the piece than the pull cut does. That looks pretty good. Now the only thing I have to do next is just to square up the tenon, and the back surface will all be done. And I'm just using a parting tool here to square up the tenon. The one feature about this lathe I don't like is that you have to reach over the piece that you're turning every time you turn the lathe on and off. But I guess I can just live with that, just have to be careful. Looks like I missed some of the initial video here when starting to turn this piece. Anyway, you basically turn this side just like a regular bowl. And of course, I'm going to turn it in stages. So I'm going to turn the first inch or two down to final thickness, and then go on to the next 2 or 3 inches. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button. And you can also hit the notifications to get notifications when I release and post new videos. I'm just going to carefully use this negative rake bowl scraper just to remove any little ridges. I won't use it on the very tips because it's just a little too grabby there, but basically the transition between the first part that I turned and then the second part, there's always a little bit of a line there, so I'm just smoothing that out. To finish the bottom area, I'm going to use this bottoming bowl gouge. It just has a blunter angle, and the sides aren't swept back as much. I find I just get a cleaner cut. Well, that looks good, a nice smooth surface on the bottom. I've started the sanding by just sanding these outer tips with the piece stationary, and then when I've got all those done, then I'll spin the piece and just do as much as I can of the inside, trying not to hit those interrupted cuts or interrupted pieces on the outside as it's spinning around. Once it's all sanded, then I will use a jam chuck to turn the piece around and just remove the tenon on the bottom and do a little bit of sanding as well. Fortunately, the center was marked here, so I can use that center with the tailstock, and it centers up pretty nicely and doesn't vibrate too much. Yeah, trying to just find that center by measurement is pretty tricky, so it's really good practice to mark your centers when you can. I removed the small bottom nib by grinding it away, as I've done on some of my other previous videos. And now I'm just taking a wood burner and just touching up all of the outside surfaces of this. The bandsaw left a pretty rough surface, and to try to sand that, I mean, would take hours and hours and hours. This way I think it looks a little more natural, and the wood burner just leaves a nice sort of dark finish all the way around it. For my final finish, I just sprayed these maple leaf type pieces with just a rattle can of spray lacquer. Typically I'll use something like Deft semi-gloss lacquer if I can get my hands on it. After spraying the surface with lacquer and then letting it cure, now I'm going to buff it. And this initial buff is with the Tripoli wheel. It's the coarsest one. And you just have to be careful and make sure the piece doesn't slip out of your hands. Get the buffing wheel going at a good speed and then move around to all areas. If you stay in one area too long, it might actually burn through the surface. That came out pretty nice. Sometimes I just go with the one wheel only. In this case, I've changed wheels, and I'm going to go with the next level of wheel, which is the white diamond. And you can see the white diamond in my hand there. It's just a little finer abrasive than the Tripoli. Well, that's definitely brought it up even shinier. The third and final wheel just uses carnauba wax, and you just need a little bit of that on the wheel. And this is the final stage. This buffing really brought out the figure in the wood. Really looks nice. Stay tuned for some pictures right at the very end of the video. I hope you enjoyed the video. The piece turned out pretty nice. It's a great little project. And as you can see, I've got a few more to do.